Antarctica.
The coldest, deadliest, most unforgiving land on Earth. A place where temperatures fall below -50 degrees, where winds scream louder than jet engines, and where explorers often vanish into the snow, never to be seen again. Now imagine being trapped in this icy desert. Your compass is frozen, your maps are useless, your instruments have stopped working. But on your wrist, one tiny machine continues to tick, second after second, like the heartbeat of survival. This is not science fiction. This is the real story of how a luxury wristwatch, the Rolex Oyster, became the silent savior of Antarctic explorers, and later, the ultimate symbol of wealth and power.
Chapter 1. The Deadly Race for Antarctica. 2-8. At the dawn of the 20th century, Antarctica was called the last frontier. No one had truly conquered it. Nations dreamed of planting their flags on the South Pole, but the price of glory was high. The tragedy of Captain Scott. In 1910, British explorer Robert Falcon Scott led an expedition to claim the South Pole. His men fought endless blizzards, starvation, and frostbite. Their equipment failed, their compasses froze, and their watches, they stopped working in the cold. Without reliable timekeeping, they miscalculated food rations. When Scott's frozen body was found, his diary revealed the truth. They had lost the battle against time itself. Shackleton's struggle. Another British explorer, Ernest Shackleton, famously said, "By endurance we conquer." But even his legendary voyage in the frozen seas of Antarctica showed one brutal fact. Ordinary watches and instruments were useless in this land. For explorers, survival depended not just on courage, but on a watch that could keep ticking against death itself. Chapter 2. The Birth of a Legend. Far away in Switzerland, a man named Hans Wilsdorf was building something revolutionary. He wanted to create a wristwatch that was not just elegant, but indestructible. In 1926, he introduced the Rolex Oyster, the world's first truly waterproof and dustproof wristwatch. Why Oyster? Because its case was sealed like an oyster shell. Airtight, watertight, unbreakable. Its crown screwed down tight. Its movement was protected from dust, water, and ice. But words were not enough. Rolex needed proof. Mercedes Gleitz's swim. In 1927, a young British swimmer, Mercedes Gleitze, attempted to swim across the icy English Channel. On her wrist, a brand new Rolex Oyster. For more than 10 hours, she fought freezing waters and exhaustion. When she finally reached the shore, half conscious, the crowd was amazed. Not only had she survived the channel, but the Rolex on her wrist was still ticking perfectly. Chapter 3. Into the White Desert. Rolex in Antarctica. Explorers take Rolex by the 1930s and 40s. Explorers preparing for Antarctic missions carried Rolex Oysters. Other instruments froze, cracked, or failed. But Rolex kept ticking. No matter the storm. Imagine it. Blizzards so thick you cannot see your own hands. Temperatures that freeze skin in seconds. Nights so long the sun disappears for months. In this chaos, Rolex became more than a watch. It was a lifeline. Explorers used it to measure food rations by timing journeys, calculate when to move and when to rest, track days in the endless Antarctic darkness. One wrong calculation meant death. But the Rolex gave explorers precision they could trust, a heartbeat of hope. One explorer later wrote, "When everything else broke, the Rolex ticked like a heartbeat of hope." Chapter 4. From survival tool to icon of luxury. Rolex, however, was not just a tool. It was a brand that understood the power of storytelling. Advertising adventure Rolex used these expeditions as proof. In the 1950s, Rolex sponsored climbers of Mount Everest, including Sir Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay. The luxury transformation. Suddenly, Rolex was no longer just for explorers. It became the ultimate symbol of wealth, power, and success. Billionaires wore it in boardrooms. Actors wore it on red carpets. Presidents wore it while making history. Owning a Rolex meant more than telling time. Chapter 5. The Legacy of Rolex. Today, Rolex is seen as the crown of luxury, a shining status symbol. But inside every Rolex Oyster is a truth most people forget. It was created not for fashion, but for survival. It has crossed oceans, climbed mountains, survived storms, and it has ticked in the coldest place on Earth. Rolex doesn't just sell watches, it sells trust, it sells survival, it sells a legacy. So the next time you see a Rolex shining on someone's wrist, remember, it is not just gold, it is not just steel, it is not just luxury, it is a piece of history, a story of explorers lost in snow, fighting against nature, with one tiny watch ticking like the last heartbeat of hope. This is why Rolex became the most desired watch in the world, not because it tells time, but because it tells a story. Would you trust your life to a watch? For those men in Antarctica, they already did.